It's that time of the year again, when all us YouTubers and the Academy put movies on a pedestal claiming we've figured out exactly which films are the best of the best. Of course, movies are always subjective, but where's the fun in that? So here are the indisputable best pictures of the entire year. And if the Academy nominations are not an exact match, well, they're just wrong now, aren't they? Let's get into it. I thought a lot about what I wanted to put at number 10. I had about a dozen that were runners-up that I could have slotted in here at the bottom. Some more art house and others more big blockbuster adventures. I kind of wanted something more relaxed, a movie that I can show to almost anyone and they're likely to have a good time. But sometimes all anyone is really looking for is some good fun escapism. I kept coming back to one film that I had recommended over and over this year. In the end, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves just edged up the runners-up. Dungeons & Dragons is basically Guardians of the Galaxy meets classic fantasy tropes. A loyal adaptation of D&D mixed with just the right amount of tongue-in-cheek satire. It knows when to make fun of the source material and when to be loyal. In a year full of lazy CGI green screen action, it took what may have been, just CGI slop and made creative, well-thought-out action sequences with comedy that hit as a blend of Whedon-esque quips and stupid slapstick. It kept everything from feeling just farcical by adding some authentic, heartfelt moments and some believable character beats. The cast works great as a mix of big stars like Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez, with relatively lesser-known ones like Justice Smith and Sophia Lillis. They all bounce off each other well, with this natural, easygoing chemistry of a TV cast well into their third season. It made for some of the most fun I had at the theater this year, and just as much fun when I've rewatched it at home with a big group. A light, fluffy, and fun action comedy that delivers in just about everything it was trying to do. Sometimes, that's all anyone is looking for. A good time with friends to kill a couple hours. To this extent, Dungeons & Dragons is just what the doctor ordered. Number 9. Enough of the fun stuff. Let's get to the real cinema. As much as Martin Scorsese has been ridiculed and memed for his "this is cinema" comments, the guy shows he can still put his money where his mouth is. We are talking about one of the most pivotal directors in history, who after decades of making films, hasn't missed a step with his craft. This is a man dedicated to film as an art. I may disagree with his personal limited perspective of cinema, but I cannot argue with the amount of care and dedication that he puts into every frame. Though Killers of the Flower Moon may suffer from excessive bloat, it makes up for it with gorgeous cinematography and stellar performances directed by a confident veteran. Here Scorsese gets to work with his two favorites, DiCaprio and De Niro. It's always good to see De Niro sink his teeth into some meatier roles. DiCaprio's Ernest Burkhart, meanwhile, is one of the most fascinating characters brought to screen this year. A man who on the surface level seems to have this authentic love for his wife and kids, but is consumed by his own greed, stupidity, and family loyalty to such an extent that he is willing to commit unspeakable evil on all of them. And speaking of this, some have taken issue with Killers of the Flower Moon being from the criminal perspective rather than the victims, as the source material was. Scorsese has always had a fascination with the criminal mind and what drives people to acts of great evil. Yet beneath that fascination is a somewhat innocent and appealing notion that those who commit such evil acts, they will get their comeuppance. Although the primary point of view may be from that of the wrongdoers, he doesn't neglect those real-life figures who were wronged. Much care seems to have been taken to work with the Osage Nation to accurately depict the culture and find the heart of the story in Molly Kyle. Lily Gladstone gives an understated yet breakout performance in the role. It is through these conflicted relationships that Killers of the Flower Moon works as a satisfying crime drama, where a lesser film may have struggled as a transparent murder mystery. Overall, this was yet another satisfying addition to an auteur's long and impressive career. Number 8. Godzilla -1. I was shocked how much I liked this film. I've been a fan of Godzilla since I was a kid, and they replayed the dubbed Japanese movies on TV. But apart from the original 1954 film or the recent Shin Godzilla, the series has mostly been, schlock entertainment. Silly movies with either big visuals and little substance, or just enjoyable romps with people in costumes tossing one another around cardboard cities. Both have their value, and I have enjoyed pretty much all of them to some degree. Even at its worst, Godzilla still remains entertaining, if nothing else. -1, however, is in another league and joins the original and Shin as the best of the franchise by keeping a pulse on what made this character endure over 70 years. The original Godzilla was pretty heavy-handedly a metaphor for the atomic bombings during World War II and Japanese anxiety over further nuclear testing and development. Shin Godzilla, meanwhile, had parallels to the government's mishandling of the Fukushima meltdown. -1 strengthens these metaphors by moving the events of the film even closer to the dropping of the 2 bombs. Here, Godzilla is not representative of future nuclear disaster, but that of past tragedy and survival guilt. This guilt is the pivotal driving force through the entire movie. For the most part, this is a post-war drama, with Godzilla occasionally making an appearance to knock over some buildings. In a way, it feels very Spielbergian, a larger-than-life fantastical situation, but grounded in the human element. The acting at times, it can get a little melodramatic, but it is always brought back by those likable characters and good old-fashioned kaiju destruction. And it is really amazing what they managed to get out of that $15 million budget. No doubt helped by a director who used to work in VFX and knew how to pull the most out of the money. This is a Godzilla film that shows that Japan is still the master of their monster, and no one can do it better than they can. Number 7, American Fiction. Here is a movie that, almost paradoxically, may be getting praise for the exact thing it's critiquing. American Fiction was a hard one for me to find, as the release was so limited in my area. I had to drive about 2 hours to a theater pub, hybrid, just to catch it. But it was a trip well worth it. American Fiction is a biting social satire that targets how racial groups can view ethnicities within bubbles. But American Fiction exists squarely in the field of few other films, such as Sorry to Bother You, Get Out, or the recent They Cloned Tyrone. All of these kind of cynically satirize how culture is broken down into key stereotypical elements, often monetized in a just simplistic form. The entertainment industry often caters to certain media while ignoring more authentic takes on everyday racial experience. Look no further than Past Lives being ignored commercially this year. It's not always just the critical element. American Fiction deals with some lofty themes and messaging, but never really feels overly preachy. Big social commentary like this can be a blunt instrument sometimes. But when grounded in a likable protagonist, it pulls it all together and keeps it from feeling like a sermon. It has a phenomenal, understated performance by Jeffrey Wright, and keeps things energetic and entertaining through sharp comedy. As a writer myself, the movie reached me on a personal level when it gets to the topic of writing down to an audience or being forced to write something you hate just to make money. Monetary incentives versus an authentic love of your craft or storytelling. That hit home for me. It is one of the most fascinating movies of the year, and I will be digesting it over the next few weeks. Number 6, John Wick Chapter 4. In my review earlier this year, I called this a masterpiece of action choreography. The John Wick films, they're far from deep when it comes to story. The real appeal of this franchise is in that unique world building, amazing action, and Keanu Reeves' just easygoing chemistry. A brilliant mix of John Woo's shoot-'em-up 90s gunplay with martial arts films. What they do here with stunt work and choreography, it really is incredible, leaving behind any sense of realism for this almost anime-inspired over-the-top spectacle. In this case, it's hard to choose just one standout piece of action. You have the brilliant Japanese sequence, or the Frogger roundabout car chase, or the fight up the staircase, or my personal favorite, the top-down gunfight with arsenal rounds. Practical and well-thought-out action choreography with limited CGI, something missing in most action today. And it's made all the better by having this beautiful, sharp camera work. Surprisingly, all of it culminates in an understated scene that plays more on suspense and character relationships rather than overblown action conclusions. Everything wraps up in a satisfying, just quieter moment that feels like we can leave it here and let John Wick stand as one of the best action series of the last 10 years. Let's see if they have the self-restraint to just leave it alone. Number 5, Past Lives. This is a movie that played with my emotions more than any this year. It asked the great question many of us have wondered for the one who got away. What if? A question interesting on its own, but strengthened when framed in the director's own personal experiences and cultural roots. And this is a movie that feels deeply personal, a window into the director's experiences in a way just few movies have managed. The main character, played by Greta Lee, lives most of her life in America, making her a relatable cultural surrogate for U.S. audiences, yet still has enough of a connection back to her Korean heritage to provide a unique perspective. This is represented through her childhood friend, played by Tao Young, who is both an attachment to her old life and a big question mark for her future. He represents both future potential and past regrets. It plays with themes of almost reincarnation, that all our connections are ones we've had in our past lives, as they go stronger in each life. What was it in the last? What will it be in the next? The relationships are extremely grounded and real, but also in a way incorporeal, as the story explores how people move down different streams by either direct actions or simple inactions. It's how everyone is connected to one another in this little web we call life. It is a film both easily accessible in the emotional relatability, but it's also a thinker film, as it makes you sit down with the ideas long after the credits roll. I personally found myself thinking about this movie months after I saw it. For me, that is a mark of a movie that sticks with you in the best ways. Number 4, Anatomy of a Fall. So I have no idea French courtrooms actually work like this. In some ways, I certainly hope not, because some of the stuff that happens here would never fly in America. Like introducing new evidence at a whim, absolute insanity. But at the same time, I kind of also hope that it does work this way, because at times the proceedings can be pure chaos, which is pretty entertaining and off the wall. Either way, my lack of knowledge on French law was probably to this film's benefit. The movie frames itself as this courtroom drama, but is actually an examination of marital bitterness and strife. That's not to say the murder plot isn't great. The mystery of the husband's death, it is highly engaging just on its own. But when you add in the other elements, a courtroom drama, undertones of doubt in people you trust, and unbalanced artistic success within a creative household, all of this just becomes this intriguing cocktail. It is high stakes with amazing performances, twists and turns, and a child performance that is so real and visceral. Actor, and I'm going to butcher his name, Milo Machado Grainer, I think that's it, taps into a fear that every child who has listened to late-night arguments between parents really has. A fear that your parents maybe hate each other and that your life could be torn apart. Anatomy of a Fall takes this to the extreme as the plot hinges on Sandra Hüller's brilliant performance that is played in a way that makes her both simultaneously suspicious and innocent. It is a great mystery, a great family drama, and a great courtroom drama, all wrapped up into one concise package. Just being one of those things would have been enough. Nailing all three puts this movie into my top 5. Number 3, Poor Things. Director Yorgos Lanthimos, he's known for being, well, weird. From The Lobster to The Favorite to now Poor Things, his movies seem this delightful mix of part fairy tale, part social commentary, and part goofy slapstick. It's an absurd yet creative combination, giving Lanthimos probably the most distinct visual voice since Wes Anderson. This will undoubtedly make people just call it a gimmick in the near future, but for now, it still feels like a breath of fresh air. The movie is gorgeous with his signature pinhole camera and fisheye lens look, as he alternates between uncomfortably restrictive and equally uncomfortably encompassing. The movie itself is not that complex. It is really a blend of Frankenstein meets Barbie, a female creation by a male mad scientist seeking to break free of her many male figures controlling her life and find her own autonomy, expressed in a newfound sexual liberation. This is shown brilliantly by Emma Stone's performance, the best of her career, as she transitions from a discontent idiot to a selfish snob to a true independent free thinker. I saw a lot of parallels in this character arc to Flowers of Algernon, a story about a person with a mental disability becoming a genius. While Poor Things doesn't have the same digression arc, I don't think anyone has shown the physical and linguistic transition from dullard to intelligent better. The sex at times can feel a little overindulgent, but serves to reinforce the central themes regarding the movement from childhood to adulthood. And this keeps it from being outright gratuitous. But for me, this was also just one of the funniest movies of the year. The jokes hit hard, especially from Mark Ruffalo, who may give my favorite performance of the year. I'm realizing Yorgos Lanthimos may be a mad genius in directing, because his actors' performance, pretty much all of them, are some of my favorites of the year. This will not be a movie for everyone. It will turn a lot of people off. But it was my kind of weird. Number 2, Spider-Man, Across the Spiderverse. I am a major animation buff. If someone were to ask me my favorite medium, it would be hands down animation for the pure endless artistic expression that it allows. I've said before that I thought American animation kind of got stuck in a rut. Pixar ushered in a new age of CGI animation, and for a long time, they set the benchmark standard, and everyone just kind of emulated it. That's not to say there weren't, unique art styles. There were. But they all got kind of stale and repetitive. Then came Into the Spider-Verse, and it was like breaking open a creative dam. A style we'd never seen before, changing frame rates, mixing CGI with hand-drawn elements. It brilliantly built on Pixar's own Paperman short film and exploded it tenfold. That would have been enough, but it also gave us a great story and characters, possibly the best Spider-Man movie ever made, at least as far as I'm concerned. How do you top that? Well, you don't. I actually think Into the Spider-Verse is still the stronger movie overall, as it's more self-contained and standalone. But what they didn't do was just repeat everything a second time. They stepped it up. The characters are as great as ever, and they've matured since we've last seen them. The story of individuality hits in just new ways, but the animators are still the real heroes. They slept under their desks and worked overtime for pennies and little personal recognition. but the result is one of the best animated films I've seen that flawlessly mixes styles and personality. The escape from the Spider Society isn't just a great action sequence. It is a tribute to animation with so many moving elements that it will take you just dozens of watches to catch everything. This is an animation fan's dream, a movie that gets better with each watch and has a story and characters to just back it up, leaving you wanting that next film immediately. You don't always have to top the original. Sometimes just being a satisfying follow-up is more than enough. Number 1. Oppenheimer. You knew it was going to be this one. Christopher Nolan is one of the top most influential directors working today. His reputation speaks for itself, which is why he can create a talking head drama which makes nearly $1 billion at the box office. Of course, Barbie and some internet free marketing deserves just a little bit of that credit, but so too does the film itself. In my review, I said I could easily see this being considered the magnum opus of Christopher Nolan's entire career. And that's an opinion I still back. This was a tough film to make. Usually I don't like what I call life biopics, where they attempt to condense an entire person's life or career down to 2 hours. It's hard to do and usually feels like this fast-paced summary. I typically prefer biopics that focus on a point in the subject's life because they can spend more care and attention on that one achievement or singular moment. Oppenheimer both does this and it kind of doesn't. The film finds a brilliant through line. A lesser director would have made this movie about the creation of the atomic bomb. And on the surface level, this movie is about that. Or at least the second act is. The marketing certainly wanted you to think that. But that's not what this movie is about. Nolan smartly focused on Oppenheimer's role in red hysteria, while distilling down the story to 3 distinct moments in his life. The first act covering his role in the Communist Party. The second act covering paranoia regarding Soviet spies within the Manhattan Project. And finally, Oppenheimer's own trial regarding his connection to the communist movement. The movie takes these 3 acts and combines them into a singular arc, while maintaining an explosive energy and breakneck editing pace that is complemented by a pounding score. Add in some of the best performances of the year, as well as my favorite scene of the year, where Oppenheimer has his just public meltdown, and this makes Oppenheimer my number 1 movie of 2023, and this year's Best Picture. It is all of Nolan's skills as a filmmaker on display, and we can only hope that his resume continues to add more and more films of this caliber. For now, he may be still on track to be listed with the greats, but only time will tell. And those are my best pictures of the year. I would love to hear your opinions on what you thought were the best movies or what I maybe missed. I haven't seen everything, but I have seen a lot. Zone of Interest is still a big one I missed, but I really hope it's going to come to my area soon. I will be putting out my full Every Movie of the Year tier list soon, where I talk about every movie I saw for 2023. It's usually a long one, but a fun one, so subscribe for that. Have a great new year, and please keep those reels turning. Thank you.